time is 3:32 p.m. Today we have President, not President, Senator Costello, Senator Holland, Senator Kawasaki, and myself, Chairman Shower. I'd like to remind everybody, please turn off your cell phones. Staff we have today is Terrence Shanagan, Committee Aide for State Affairs, Harry Cooperhead, our Senate Records, and we've got Alex with the LAO. We have 4 items on today's agenda. We're going to be hearing public testimony on, first, SJR5, Budget Reserve. SJR7 is second, Constitutional Amendment State Tax Voter Approval. Third is SJR6, Constitutional Amendment Permanent Fund and PFDs. Fourth, SB53, Permanent Fund Advisory Vote. Are there any questions or comments from the committee members before we proceed with the first item on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll now move on to public testimony for SJR5, Constitutional Amendment, Appropriation Limit Budget Reserve by Governor Dunleavy. I'm going to open public testimony at this time. We have, looks like one testifier online, Matthew Maxner from Juneau. Matthew, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I was actually going to talk about 6 and 7.
Okay, I'm going to put you back on off the line there. Then thanks, Matthew. I'll hold and we'll pull you up for testimony on 6 and 7. And I don't see anybody else online, correct, for testimony? Is there anybody in the room that would like to testify? Okay, get off of that one. Seeing no more testifiers at this time for SJR5, I'm going to close public testimony. I will continue to remind everybody that if you want to get testimony in for these amendments, you are welcome to do so, and you can send that to Senate State Affairs online, and we'll take that testimony and enter it into the public record. All right, it's my intent to move the bill out today. Do any members have last questions for the sponsor or in general before we make the motion? All right, seeing none, today you are Vice Chair Senator Holland.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Senate State Affairs Committee substitute for Senate Joint Resolution 5, Work Order 32-Golf Sierra 1664/Alpha be moved out of the State Affairs Committee.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill is moved out of committee. We're going to take an at ease to sign the paperwork. Reminder again one more time for those online as we took that break. If you did not get a chance to call in today and this gets spread like it does through social media and other sources later, you can send that written testimony to SSTA, that's Sierra Sierra Tango Alpha, at akleg.gov. We're going to move on to public testimony for SJR7, Constitutional Amendment State Tax Voter Approval. And at this time, I believe we have 2 testifiers. There may be 3 here. And we're going to go through that and make sure we jump back to the other individuals. So we're going to go ahead and open up public testimony for Senate Joint Resolution number 7. And we're going to start with the first one I had there, which was Matthew Maxner, again, because you said you want to testify on 6 and 7. Back to you, Matthew. Go ahead and put yourself on the record, who you represent, and you have 2 minutes. Please begin.
Okay, sir. Mr. Shower, my name is Matthew Maxner. I represent myself, but I am a very active member of the Alaska Libertarian Party. Regarding SJR7, I believe this is the state tax amendment that was proposed by Governor Dunleavy, and it's my understanding that basically this is a proposal that prohibits the establishment of a state tax without the approval of the voters of the state. And first of all, I'm, being a libertarian that I am, I feel that all taxation is theft. So I would be very much in favor of this kind of amendment passing your committee, obviously, and even passing just basically the Senate, because I think it's important that the voters actually have a say in matters of this kind of matter. First of all, with taxes and everything, that's very important that the voters familiarize themselves with taxes and how exactly this would affect their pocketbooks and everything. I just feel that it's just important that this just passes. That's all I'm going to say for now.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate your testimony today, Matthew. I have, going back to what we have online here, is a Jordan Harari. I hope I got that right, from Anchorage. Go ahead, Jordan, put yourself on the record with your name and who you represent. Begin your testimony.
You did get my name right, thank you. Name is Jordan Harari. I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, and I'm representing myself today. Thank you for your time and letting me speak. I would like to show my support for this SJR resolution for the tax amendment. Basically, it's my belief that any taxation of the people should be approved by the people, and I agree that this amendment is the right track to make sure that that is enacted. Politicians seem to be enacting taxes for the sake of sparing themselves from embarrassment over their bad fiscal policies. And so rather than enacting a tax to cover short-sightedness in the short term, it actually impacts the economy of Alaska in the long term, making less people want to come here, less people want to live here and work here and travel here. So while any kind of future taxation might seem appropriate, it actually hurts us overall and only brings in a minimal amount of revenue. So I agree with this proposed resolution. I would also like to recommend to the body that they might consider changing the wording from a majority of the people to a 2/3 majority as a alternative option. If there is a taxation amendment proposed, it should be something that we should all agree on, and if a simple majority is enough to get it enacted, that could lead to organizations and corporations and money coming out from out of state trying to push this and enact this locally and statewide to get people's opinions to sway. It would be a little easier to enact, I think. So a 2/3 majority for this resolution, I think, would be a good idea, but that's my 2 cents. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate you coming on board to testify today. Next, it looks like we have Bert Hotaling from Big Lake. Sir, go ahead and put yourself on the record with your name, who you represent, and please begin.
Hi, my name is Bert Hotaling, and I represent myself and my child. I'm calling today about SJR7 and the state tax. I do agree that any tax that is to be imposed upon Alaskan citizens, myself, my child, or anybody else, that it go through a voter approval process of us Alaskans approving this to happen. I also think there needs to be revisions put into this that says that any increase to existing taxes must also go through a voter approval before it can be initiated, like the doubling of the gas tax. This should be something that Alaskans should be voting on and agreeing to whether or not they want to pay double the gas tax. This is so far from what I've heard about SJR7, it is a worthwhile bill, but needs to have some more revisions added to it that addresses more of the concerns of the majority and not just the minority when it comes to tax approval. Like the last speaker had said, there needs to be more of a majority vote to make these taxes pass, not just the minority of 51%. If we also wanted you to already closed testimony on SJR5 and SJR6, I believe. I would have loved to have had more than just a 2-minute time to be able to try to pick up the telephone and call to testify on those. I am against either one of them. Anything that restricts our permanent fund dividend, does not enshrine it under the statutory PFD, should not be bills that get presented forward going here on forth. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to testifying on SB53.
And Bert, just for your information, we only closed 5, SJR5 so far, so we're going to open up testimony on each one. So if you stay on the line, you'll have an opportunity here shortly to testify on SJR6 as well as SB53. Thank you for the time on this one. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next one. You got it? And just to be clear, Matthew has already testified, so that's the only one we had added, correct? Okay. At this time, I don't see anybody else online to testify on SJR7. Is there anybody in the room that would like to testify? Seeing none, at this time I'm going to go and close public testimony on SJR7. It's my intent to move the bill out today. Do any members have last questions for the sponsor in general before we make the motion? Okay, seeing none, Senator Holland.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Senate State Affairs Committee substitute for SJR7 Work Order 32-GCR1711/A be moved out of the State Affairs Committee.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, bill is moved out of committee. We're going to take an ad easy to sign paperwork. Record, as a reminder for those online who may have joined recently, if you did not get a chance to testify on any of these bills today, SJR5, 6, 7, or SB53, you can submit your written testimony to us online at Senate State Affairs. That's SSTA at aklag.gov. We're going to move on now to public testimony for SJR6, Constitutional Amendment, Permanent Fund, and PFDs. You're going to have 2 minutes on the record, so please identify yourself and who you represent. And we're going to get started opening public testimony on SJR6. The first one we have online today is Carolyn Reed. Carolyn, if you can hear us, go ahead and put yourself on the record and who you represent and begin.
Hi, this is about the legislature taking portions of the PFD, is that correct?
This is SJR6, Carolyn. So this is the governor's proposal on his long-term solution to the permanent fund dividend itself and how it would work.
And what is his long-term solution?
What's that? Hey, Carolyn, I'm going to pause just for a moment because I'm taking your time up here. So if you could hold on 1 second, we're going to go at ease. There's a question here, and we'll come right back to you. Stand by. At ease, just for a moment. What's that? Carolyn, hold on 1 second. I'm going to reset the clock here because I don't want to take your time away. So one potato. So Carolyn, we had a little confusion about which one we are. We are in SJR6. That's the constitutional amendment from the governor on the permanent fund and the permanent fund dividends. So if that's what you intended to testify to, we're going to go ahead and allow your 2 minutes of full time again. Please state your name and who you represent, and you may begin.
Carolyn Reed. My name is Carolyn Reed, and I represent my entire family, 25 people.
Go ahead.
My point is that the permanent fund dividend, the portion of it that goes to the people of Alaska, needs to be left alone except if it's gone through the vote of the people. Otherwise, just leave it alone, quit tapping away at it, quit taking half of it, a quarter of it, any of it. Just leave it to the people as it was intended to stay. And don't cater to the Department of Education or whoever puts you, elected officials into office. You serve the people of Alaska, and they want you to leave it alone. The majority of Alaska does not want anyone to take it away. Return the portion of the PFD that you've already stolen back to the people. And anything that says anything different than that needs to go before the vote of the people. And that's it.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you, Carolyn, for your time, taking the time to call in and testify today. We're going to move on to the next person. We've got Terry Harris. If you'd put yourself on the record with name, who you represent, and please begin.
Hey, I'm Terry Harris. First of all, I wanted to remind you guys, and I ask you to pass this on to your other legislators and coworkers. You were not voted into office to make hard decisions. You were voted into office to represent your constituents. And the people have told you time and time again not to touch that PFD. I support a vote of the people on the PFD on the traditional formula only. I also wanted to testify on the other one, but you closed testimony while I was on the line waiting to testify for SJR7. I do support a vote for taxes with a 2/3 majority and any increases, and I also want to hold on for the next public testimony. That's it.
Thank you, Terry. You're absolutely welcome to hold on, and of course, by saying that, you got your point across on SJR7 as well. So well done getting it all in there, but hang on the line because you'll have a chance coming up on SB53. Thank you for that testimony. We're going to move on to the next one. We've got Teresa Hansen from Alaska. When you're ready, Teresa, please put yourself on the record and begin.
Yes, I'm Teresa Hansen, and I'm calling about, obviously, the PFD at question. And John Hammond signed the bill to create the APFC, money management investments, and then again it was legislated in 1980. And the first checks were distributed for $1,000 in 1982. Since then, our legislators, our body, our legislative body, has managed to tap into that and not even considered the voice of the people to have a voice in that. And I'm going to have to agree. It should go before it should go before the people for a vote on whether you're going to tap into that or not. Otherwise, it needs to be restored back to its original agreement as set forth. And it needs to stop being a tool at your disposal when you have overspent in other areas. And this stealing of the PFD needs to stop. And that's what I have to say. And I do represent, over 65 family members that feel the same way I do. And we're all Alaskan residents. So that's what I have to say. I'm saying stop the steal.
Thank you, Teresa, for taking the time to call in today to testify on SJR6. We're going to move on to the next one is Bert Hotaling again, who called before, and I believe you want to testify again on SJR6. You know the drill, sir. Go ahead and put yourself on the record.
Hi, my name is Bert Hufftelling. I am talking to you today about SJR6, the constitutional appropriation that the permanent fund and PFDs that the governor has put out there. And I'm completely against what the governor has proposed. It changes the language in there that puts all control into legislators' hands. You will ultimately end up being able to determine who will and who won't be able to get a PFD in the future. It changes the language to where it's definitely a may instead of a shall. Our Supreme Court has ruled that shall and may means the exact same things in their first ruling for the permanent fund dividend, and the same language is also within this bill. So even though it says that it is there to try to protect our future for the PFD, it's up to the legislators on whether or not that may happen. And I'll emphasize the word may, because you may change the legislation down the road, even though it is in our Constitution, to where we do not see a PFD, especially if you put in the constitutional cap on the budget, to where it would be $6 billion and spend $6 billion on the state and capital budget. That leaves nothing there for the permanent fund dividend. So I am a no when it comes to SJR6. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert, for taking the time to call and testify. You're welcome to stay on 53 as well. I think you wanted to do that. We're going to move on now to Vicki Jo Kennedy. Vicki, welcome back to State Affairs. We've heard you many times in the past. Go ahead and put yourself on the record. Who you represent? Please begin.
Well, it's Vicki Jo Kennedy, and I'm still with the Grandma Brigade, and still here in Juneau. As you know, because we were on the same plane when I came back from the mainland a couple of weeks ago. And I am definitely against SJR6, okay? And I'll tell you exactly why. Because why would I put everything I depend on in the hands of the legislature when they can't even prove to me that they can be responsible for themselves? They have appropriation. They go into secret meetings, and they go, oh, well, we're not going to have any per diem if we can't go over 120 days. So then the very next year they go into another meeting and go, oh, we're going to do away with that law, and we're going to still get our per diem. And that's $309 a day for each and every one of the legislators, except for our three that live right here in Juneau. And you know what? I'm over it. I'm over the top with it. You know, it's a really big place for us to spend a whole lot of money in. And you guys just need to get it together and realize that that perm fund was put there for a reason. When I was in Homer a month ago almost, the road out of Homer up the Sterling Highway up past Happy Valley, oh my God, it was a nightmare. And I thought we had it bad with no ferries. Bob tried to warn me, he said, oh, you wait. So essential services in this state, yes. But we will put locks and chains on you guys like, well, I won't even make a comparison, but we will put locks and chains on you because that's why the perm fund was created, for in times where the money in the oil funds ran out, that money could be spent on essential services. There is no reason we should be doing without in this state right now.
Thank you,
But
Joe.
it's
Thank
not
you.
for a 1% for the arts and all that other happy crap.
Hey, Vicki Joe, thank you. Your time's up. Could you go ahead and close it up, please?
Services back in the state.
Vicki Joe, can you give us a closing statement? We're a little past your 2 minutes.
Yeah, Mike Showers. Thanks for shooting in the exam, but I hope you don't have to do it again. Thank you, and thank you for hearing me.
It's always good to hear you, Vicki Joe. Thanks for calling in and taking the time. We're going to move on again to next testifier. I believe Matthew Maxner is back for testimony in SJR6. Matthew, back on the record, and go ahead and begin your testimony.
Hello, gentlemen and ladies. Again, my name is Matthew Maxner. I live in jail, and I represent myself, but I also am, like I said, an active member of the Alaska Libertarian Party. I am in favor of SJR6. And the reason is basically because I believe that this should basically go to a vote of the people as well. I believe that there's a lot of confusion over this bill over what exactly it does. And I think that people are just totally misunderstanding exactly what it does. What it's supposed to do is basically give, the people the vote over, give the people the control over what our PFD does or how it's spent and stuff. And it's basically like enshrined if it's enshrined in the constitutional amendment as the traditional method. And that's basically that makes it untouchable as to where you have the budget basically basically capped, obviously. And the last gentleman I think it was Bert who said that that there would be nothing left over. I don't believe that's even possible because the PFD is taken out of the it's basically you got your fund. I think the 25% that is taken out, basically spent specifically for dividends for the people. And so, if people were to actually educate themselves about how the PFD is distributed and actually just dispersed, I think a lot of people would be more in favor of this bill. And I understand where the previous lady was worried about the essential services. However, I think the essential services that would basically benefit the people, which is the most important thing, is benefiting getting them the money that's due to them. And I do agree that we should stop the steal. And I'm very upset over the fact that you guys did steal the money from us. And I do
past the 2 minutes. If you could wrap up, please.
Advocate. Okay, I'll wrap it up. I do advocate, the return of the money that you guys spent from us or took from us. So. I thank you very much, and I appreciate you letting me testify. Thank you.
You bet, Matthew. Thank you for taking the time to call in. We're going to move on to Chris Eichenlaub from Wasilla. Chris, go ahead and put yourself on the record, who you represent, and you may begin.
This is Chris Eichenlaub calling from Wasilla, District D7. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of got some mix-up going on with the last two. I didn't get called on. I could hear you, but I guess they went over me. Anyway, I'm just letting you know I'm for enshrinement, permission of the people for taxation, and what was the other one? There's the third one. Yeah, I guess we're not there yet, 53. But anyway, here's what I believe. I believe from this point forward, there should be no additional taxation regulations or any bills passed to tax the people or try to increase fees or any of that stuff until we get paid our traditional formula PFD. I mean, the people who took it in the butt for the last 4 years, and we've seen how that worked for our economy, and it seems like it hasn't worked out so well. So why don't we just try something new and give the people their portion first, and then they'd probably be more apt to go along with all these other fees and stuff you guys are trying to lay on them, rather than, I mean, not only that, we got an idea of how much money we got to work with. I mean, we're getting taxed, and we don't even know what it is until you guys decide. And there's no formula right now. You guys go in the back room and decide what we're going to get paid, our PFD. That's not the way it's supposed to go. So I'm for enshrinement, so that way you got some boundaries that you guys aren't going to go until we get another slick lawyer in there that figures out a way to get it out of us. I guess you have to make sure you close all loopholes on it. So anyway, that's all I got on that. Did I forget anything on? I guess I'm going to have to call back on 53, or you just want to take my word for it. But I'm for the people getting our permission for the additional taxation, enshrinement, and I can't remember what the other one was.
Chris, you can stay on the line for SB53. I do apologize you didn't make it for SJR5 and 7, but it's kind of moving fast. There's not that many callers.
Okay.
But you are welcome to, as I mentioned before, for folks, also submit your written testimony to SSTA, that's Sierra Tango Alpha, at akleg.gov. We will enter that into the record for the committee as well. But that being said, I appreciate you calling in, and you stay on the line, please. We're going to move to the next bill here shortly, and we will continue. That is all I show for testifiers online. Is there anybody in the room that would like to testify on SJR7? Okay, seeing none, it is my intent to go ahead and close public testimony this time. Public testimony is closed on SJR, and I said 7, I meant 6. I apologize. Do I need to set that right on the record, Carrie? Just say it. Okay, so we are closing public testimony this time at SJR6. I looked at the wrong top. I'm switching between them to get all the people here, so that's my bad. Okay, so seeing no more testifiers, we've closed public testimony. My intent is to move this bill out of the committee today. Do any members have last questions for the sponsor or generic comments? Okay, seeing none.
We're talking about SJR6.
That is correct, just to get it right. And so, Senator Holland, what is the will of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Senate State Affairs Committee substitute for SJR6 Work Order 32-Golf Sierra 1694/Alpha be moved out of the State Affairs Committee.
Are there any objections? Okay, seeing none, the bill is moved out of committee. We're going to take an at ease to sign the paperwork. On the record, we're back on the record. It was a little late. Just as a reminder for those online, if you did not get a chance to call in today, because we are seeing some people pop up a little bit late, you can submit your written testimony to SSTA at akleg.gov. That's Sierra Tango Alpha at akleg.gov. We're going to move on to public testimony for SB53, Permanent Fund Advisory Vote. This is also at the request of the governor and is tied to SJR6, which we just discussed. At this time, we're going to go ahead and move to online testifiers, and we're going to start at the top of the list. We have Matthew Maxner again back with us. Sir, you know the drill, so go ahead and put yourself on the record. You have 2 minutes. Please begin. Matthew, if you're with us, you might be on mute.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I just had trouble with unmuting my phone.
Give me 1 second, Matthew. I'm going to reset the clock for you just so we don't cheat you out of your 2 minutes. Go ahead, and you may begin.
Okay, so if this is the resolution, I guess that coincides with SJR6.
That is correct.
And obviously, I'm in favor of it. Like I said, this just it establishes, it helps establish an advisory committee, which is excellent. And like I said, I think people just really need to educate themselves about what exactly the PFD does. And I think it would be beneficial if our representatives went out and actually helped to educate the public about it, just by giving out pamphlets of some sort during your respective town hall meetings when we discuss the PFD. Yeah, so I guess I am in favor of this of passing this. And I'd like to see it just pass the entire Senate and get approved. So That is my testimony.
Thank you, Matthew, for calling in again, taking the time to testify on this one. We're going to move on at this time to, we have Chris Eichenlaw back online with us, a lot of the same testifiers, so you know the drill. Chris, go ahead and begin.
Yeah. Chris Eichenlaw calling from Wasilla, testifying on behalf of myself. And that guy kind of confused me on this thing. I thought this was for an advisory vote. So, yeah, I'm for an advisory vote for messing with the PFD. That I think that we got a lot of people running around telling stories about that their constituents would rather have services than their permanent fund, and I find that to be untrue, and we'll find out if we do an advisory vote. Not only that, those people days are numbered. I mean, they're dropping like flies, so go ahead and keep being a PFD grabber, see what happens. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling in again, Chris, and we're going to move on to Jordan again from Anchorage. So, Jordan, you're back with us, so, well, it says unavailable. Did we drop off? Okay. I apologize. I see that several have dropped off here because I believe they've already given their testimony. So we're going to go ahead and set on to the next one, which is looks like Terry Harris is back with us. Terry, if you can hear us, go ahead and put yourself on the record and proceed.
I am for an advisory vote on the PFD, but I want this to be clearly understood. That advisory language, it needs to be for the traditional formula only, and no way in hell by any means should a court be able to say that we would not be able to get that PFD, and the legislators should not have any say in us getting our PFD. We want it taken out. I do. I want it taken out of your hands because the people no longer trust you to represent. You've got legislators out there running around saying, I'm hired to make the hard decisions. Bullshit. You are not hired to make hard decisions. You are hired. You are hired to represent your constituents. You guys have failed severely. And I mean severely. So now, I do want to see this go to an advisory vote. I don't think I want to see it go to an advisory vote the way y'all have it written up. And I see we have a problem that is showing itself regularly with picking leadership. So I would like one of you to introduce a bill that says starting 2 weeks prior to the start of session, leadership must be chosen. And if legislators arrive in Juneau and leadership hasn't been chosen online already, and they arrive in Juneau and leadership is not chosen is not officially chosen, literally, on the day their feet hit the ground, then give them 30 days each in jail for every day there is no leadership chosen, because we should not be paying you to play games. And that's all I have to say on that.
Thanks, Terry, for calling in and testifying SB53. We're going to move on to Bert. Again, you're back with us. Please put yourself on the record, and you may begin.
Hi, my name is Bert Hufftelling. I'm from Big Lake. I represent myself and my child and a good majority of Alaskans. Today we're talking about SB53, which is just another version of stealing the PFD. It completely changes the way the ERA and the corpus of the account are to be handled. It will combine them all into one. It just like SJR6, it allows the legislators to may pay us a PFD upon your own discretion. There is nothing there that protects us Alaskans from legislators permanently stealing the PFD for their own use for the state and capital budget. This bill, in my own personal opinion, should be trash canned and thrown away. The only bill you are not hearing today is SJR1. SJR1 is the only bill that has been presented by Bill Wilikowski that enshrines our permanent fund dividend under the statutory formula. At the same time, it still allows you legislators to have a POMB draw from the ERA's account. But to change anything in the future would always have to be at the discretion of the voters of Alaska. You would not be able to tap into any more beyond your POMB draw from the ERA other than what is allowed by this constitutional amendment. SJR1 is the only one that I will personally endorse. SB53, SJR6, they are nearly identical in language. Neither one of them protects the permanent fund dividend as it is originally a formula. It is both designed so that legislators ultimately have the end decision, no different than what we have been experiencing the last 6 years since the beginning of the first theft of the PFD from Governor Walker, and throughout the changing of the regulations and statutes that govern our PFD, to where you are now even paying a portion of our PFD using tax revenue, which was never how the formula was originally designed to be, and making claims that because you don't have enough tax revenue, you cannot pay us our permanent fund dividend, even though we had record-breaking profits of nearly $10 to $15 billion made in our earnings reserve account this past year. I am a resounding no on SB53. I think it needs to go back on the table and be reworked along with SJR6. These bills should not be moving forward until they take a harder look at what the majority of Alaskans have asked you to do, those of us that voted for you to be in office. Thank you.
Thanks, Bert, for taking the time to call and testify today. This time I don't see anybody else online. Do we have any members in the room that would like to testify on SB 53? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close at this time public testimony on SB 53. You can still send it in, as I mentioned before, if you would like to get written testimony on the record as well. It is my intent to move this bill out today from the committee. Do any members have last questions for the sponsor or in general comments before we make a motion? Okay, Senator Holland.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Senate State Affairs Committee substitute for SB 53 Work Order 32-Gulf Sierra 1693/Alpha be moved out of the State Affairs Committee.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the bill is moved out of the committee, and I just want to be clear to those that were listening online, this bill is not done. It's got a long way to go, and it's going to go through to Judiciary. All of them go to Judiciary next, where there will be work done on them. So just an FYI for further testimony in the future and making comments and suggestions to changes. We're going to go ahead and take an at ease at this point to sign the paperwork. Record. All right, I've already mentioned that you can submit your testimony via written form, via email if you would like to. Thank you to everybody that showed up today, especially those online, taking the time to testify. It is an important part of our constitutional republic that citizens stay engaged. A reminder for the deadline for amendments for SB 25 is Thursday, this February 25th, 2021 at noon. Our next meeting is going to be this Thursday, February 25th at 3:30 p.m. We'll be hearing invited and public testimony on SB 25. Seeing no further comments from the committee, there is no further business at this time. We're going to go ahead and adjourn at 4:16 p.m. Thank you.
Hold on, folks. Give me just a second here. Making some noise. All right, you probably have all been wondering, where have I been? I've been missing in action for nearly 2 weeks now for doing any live streaming. Well, that's because I have to work for a living to be able to make a living to pay my bills. You guys can change all of that by going to my website, Politadick.com, and clicking that support button and making a contribution today. Every penny goes right back into making sure that I don't have to work for a living, but I can do what I really enjoy doing, which is following politics, Alaska politics, national politics, and getting the latest and greatest information to you. But when it comes to choice of putting food on the table or following politics and keeping you informed, food on the table will always come first. All right, let's get back into what we had witnessed today. Today we had testimony given from Alaskans in regards to the different bills that they have presented today. SB 53, SJR 5, 6, and 7. The only one they did not talk about was SJR1, which I gave testimony about myself personally. Wanted to make sure that got plugged in there. First, let's go through the bills. We got SB 53 and SJR6. These two are darn near identical bills. The only difference is in the language of how they, instead of like SB 53, combines the ERA and the corpus of the account into one. So there is no longer a separate account for both of them. They are now put into one account. SB 53 also changes the language to where it's no longer a statutory PFD, but is based still on a formula. But this formula is up to the discretion of the legislators on whether or not that formula stays the way it is written. They can go and come back later and say, SJR5, we put the budget cap on it at $6 billion. This budget cap means that you will no longer be able to spend above $6 billion a year. The permanent fund dividend is put underneath that cap. So we'll give you a scenario here. This past year, the budget was $5.2 billion. By the time they were through, it reached $5.4 billion. And that left only $600 million left to pay us a permanent fund dividend, with equates to basically a $1,000 PFD that we saw. There is nothing in this legislation that protects the PFD from being eroded away. So this year they come out and they say we have a budget that we want to present. So far it's somewhere around $4.8 billion. Just like we've seen in all the past previous years, this budget is going to increase. It's going to grow substantially in size. So let's pretend they don't get to $5.4 billion, but instead they get to $5.6 billion. Under the SJR5 capping of the budget, they have only $6 billion they are allowed to spend. So they spend $5.6 billion on the state and capital budget, leaving only $400 million left for the permanent fund dividend. Roughly equates out to be an $800 PFD. Excuse me. Now the following year after that, they say, oh man, our expenses have gone up. We got to spend more. We can't afford to give you guys the same amount. We need to spend another $100 million. They spend now $5.7 billion on the state and capital budget, leaving only $300 million left over for our permanent fund dividends. So now we see a $500 PFD each, with that $300 million that was left over. Now we're in the year number 3, and they come up and say, hey, you know, our expenses, our special interests out there want more money. Our failing K through 12 system that has the worst performance in the nation. In fact, we are ranked dead last with Puerto Rico. It's a toss-up on which day who is the worst. And at that point, they say, oh man, we need another $300 million to help out K through 12 and the University of Alaska, which also ranks one of the worst in the nation. And we're going to give that $300 million to them instead, on top of medical increases of another $100 million, which always seems to happen every year, and this year was no exception. So they now take that extra $300 million, and they now have a $6 billion budget. Well, under their SJR5 and their new rules for SJR6 and SB53, if any or all of these are passed at the same time, basically the bottom line is that $6 billion budget, there is now nothing left to pay us our permanent fund dividend. Zero. Nada. Zilch. And there's nothing us Alaskans can do about it. We don't get a vote on the matter. We don't get to decide what the future of our PFD would be. They just legislatively chose upon their 60-member selves to go ahead and appropriate all of the permanent fund dividend just for themselves. The only reason why they did not bring up SJR1, Bill Wielkowski's bill, is because that bill enshrines our permanent fund dividend under the original statutory formula into the Constitution of Alaska. So in other words, the statutory formula that has been paying out our permanent fund dividend for decades before Governor Walker came and stole in our first one and legislators then on after, this bill would protect it forever and on into the future, generations down the road. Our children would be able to receive their permanent fund dividend under the statutory formula. The only part about SJR1 that I don't approve of, but you know, there's got to be some give and take somewhere, is it still carves out the POMV draw of 5% for our legislators to use to pay for state and government's budget. I don't agree with it, I don't like it, but hey, when you're looking at bills that are going to change the fundamental way things have been for decades upon decades, you got to compromise sometime, because bottom line to it, if this happens, SJR1, our statutory PFD under the original formula would be in the Constitution of Alaska. In other words, our legislators can't legislate their way into stealing a portion of our permanent fund, like they have been doing for the last 6 years, to pay for state and capital budget. But it still allows them an additional 5% draw above what their share is to go ahead and cover state and capital budget expenses. What does this mean to our legislators? It means that they got to do their damn job and cut the budget. They're going to have to streamline to match the revenue that is coming in. They're going to have to do something about making sure that we can expand our resource extractions going on around the state, whether that's fishing, hunting, collection of timber, or mining, or oil, whatever it takes to increase that revenue. They need to be passing laws that protect the rights to be able for Alaskans to be able to extract the resources of one of the most richest states that we have in the United States of America. They don't want us to acknowledge that when we became the 49th state of the United States of America, that we gave up our mineral rights underneath the ground to be able to show the federal government, the lower 48 at the time, that we could afford to pay for our own bills without being a drain on the federal budget reserve, the taxes that we pay into our federal taxes every single year. This is what that accomplished for Alaska. When they opened up the first permanent fund dividend account under the PFD Corporation, they had $900 million extra money, and they decided to invest that money. And then by 1982, they had decided, oh, hey, you know, we need to create a system to be able to start paying Alaskans a share of the oil wealth, the minerals, the mining, the timber, the fishing. A portion of that wealth that has been going into this fund, we're going to now pay them a dividend. They changed the formula a couple times during that short little period until they finally found one that was constitutionally and legally able to do, which is where our statutory PFD came from, and where they had been paying it out for decades until Governor Walker and our Supreme Court changed the wording from shall now means may. It's no longer you shall pay it. Shall and may means the same thing when it comes to our legislators, that the appropriation is the transfer is now an appropriation to the legislation. The changing of those two words from shall to may and from transfer to appropriation is how they accomplish the theft of our permanent fund dividends, something that they will not stress upon when they are talking to us about what they are doing. They don't want us to know the history. They don't want us to acknowledge that we Alaskans gave up our resources to the state of Alaska, but we are still the shareholders of those resources. We are the watchdogs, the ones that sit there and make sure that our government does not spend away our mineral wealth, our rights, our God-given rights as being an Alaskan, to share within the wealth that is underneath the ground or in the waters or growing on top as in the form of trees, so on and so forth. Never forget, Alaskans own the permanent fund dividend. Nobody else, Alaskans do. Our government, our state government, does not have the right to be stealing our money to pay for state and capital budgets without our consent. But they're doing it because nobody is out there is trying to do a darn thing to stop them. Excuse me. The bills that they currently have out there, all the ones that they discussed today, capping of the permanent fund dividend, SJR6, another form of the constitutional budget, another form of the statutory PFD, but it leaves in the language of may pay it to us if they feel like it. It goes hand in hand with SB53, which changes the formula completely and then also combines the ERA and the corpus of the account into one account. So they're no longer separated and protected. And it takes away the protection of the corpus too. So does SJR6. They both take away the protection of the corpus. The only way our legislators can touch the corpus account is by the vote of the Alaskans. This is why they have not touched it since day one, and they only go after our ERA. If these bills are to get passed, this will open up Pandora's box and give our legislators, upon their own discretion of a 51% vote. They do not need 2/3 vote. They do not need 3/4. They don't need any of that to be able to tap into our ERA right now. They only need a 51% majority vote. The only way we're going to protect our permanent fund dividend is by passing a statutory law that is going to be protected under our Constitution. There's only one bill which they did not discuss today, which is SJR1, that accomplishes that. They refused to bring it up past the first committee hearings that I heard it on. Please go to, it was about a week and a half ago, they discussed SB53, SJR6, and the other one that is there, I think it's SJR5 or 7, one of those two. All the ones that had to do with the permanent fund dividend. And all of those bills, you got to listen to legal, you got to hear their definitions of what these bills are there to accomplish. All of them steal the permanent fund dividend permanently. It gives the legislators the ability to make sure that we will never see a permanent fund dividend again. It is all up to their discretion on whether or not we will get one if those are to pass. Call your legislators, email your legislators, tell them no on all of these bills, demand that they get SJR1 up onto the books, that's the bill that they start pushing through. If they want a cap on the budget, which I believe is what SJR5 was, if they want a cap on the budget, that's fine, but remove our permanent fund dividend from underneath that cap. Our PFD does not belong underneath a state and capital budget's cap. Our PFD is not to be paid with tax revenue. It is supposed to be a transfer from our ERA. But as I noted in my own testimonies that I had given them earlier today, I pointed out the fact that they are using tax revenue the last 2 years to pay our permanent fund dividend with. Their self-imposed tax or cap that they have put on it under SB21, the one that they, or SB26, I think that's it. SB26 is the one that they converted their POMV draw and then said we've got this fake make-believe cap that we have to stay underneath to be able to pay you your permanent fund dividend, which is where they came up with our $600 million from last year. They said $6 billion is our make-believe cap, and your permanent fund dividend is stuck underneath that cap. So after spending $5.4 billion on the state and capital budget, there's only $600 million left. That's the only PFD that you're going to get. This is what SJR5 does. It is a cap. It caps the state and capital budget, and it caps our permanent fund dividend underneath that cap, up to the discretion of the legislators on whether or not they want to spend it. The only one there that I did support partially was the voting of Alaskans to be able for taxes. If we are to have any new taxes imposed on the state of Alaska, that bill would allow us to have a vote put onto it. It needs to be passed by a majority of Alaskans. I would say 2/3 of the voters need to vote yes to make that happen. This can't be a 50-50 split. This can't be a 300,000 voted no, 300,001 voted yes, the 301,000 gave us a new tax. No, it needs to be at least a 2/3 vote or a 3/4 vote of the Alaskans that are voting on whether or not any new taxes would be placed into place. On top of that, this bill does not cover existing taxes. As I had pointed out during my testimony, they want to double the gas tax that we pay because it's already an existing tax. Us Alaskans wouldn't get to vote on whether or not they increase that tax. They could just do it through the legislative session. So even though it is a great idea to say Alaskans get to vote on any new taxes, it does not address the problem when it comes to existing taxes and them increasing them to astronomical prices that we Alaskans can't afford. Alright, I'm off of my soapbox. I think I've covered everything there. Please go watch the video earlier this week, or about a week and a half ago, that addressed the SB53, SJR6, SJR7, and where they talk about the permanent fund dividends and how these different bills are to work, and then go and look up the one for SJR5 when it comes to capping the budget and how they slid our permanent fund dividend underneath that cap. All those videos are well worth watching. The one from a week and a half ago, though, covering the 3 PFD bills and SJR1, is well worth your time to go and watch. SJR6, SB53, they are nothing more than a legal way for them to continuously steal more and more of the PFD, and ultimately there will not be one left for us Alaskans We've seen how well our legislators work together when it comes to protecting Alaskans' interests. If it's not for the special interest minority that whose interests they are protecting, they can care less about the majority that does not fall in those special interest categories. Like and share this video. Alaskans need to hear the testimonies of the people that had called in today, the few that seemed to actually acknowledge that this was happening. I had done several posts on this today, trying to alert people that this was happening today after I had found out from the governor's website. And but they reached absolutely nobody. Facebook is doing everything in their power to make sure that anything that goes against the agenda that they want to have in play is not reaching any of my 3,000 plus followers out there. We got 3,500 people that follow Politadick, and both of the posts for this happening today have reached less than around 60 people. And not a single one of them, I don't think either one of them got a single like on them, because it was Facebook made sure that they did not propagate so that you guys were informed that they were taking testimonies today, that Alaskans needed to call in, that Alaskans needed to be participating in what was going on right now. They made sure that our voices have been silenced. It's sad to know that Facebook is working this way. I'm not giving up, though. I am going to keep battling against Facebook. I'm going to keep on posting. I'm going to keep putting my messages out there. I'm going to keep alerting you Alaskans what is going on. And you do the same thing. I mean, it's liking, sharing, coming and visiting the page daily. Facebook may not be sending you messages that my page even exists anymore, that I'm posting things. I am posting things, but you're not getting any notification that I'm posting things. This is Facebook's way of suppressing our reach to you, our followers, who are interested in understanding the politics that are going on locally and nationwide. I try to be uncut, unfiltered, and that's what this is. Thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. I hope that the testimonies given on these different bills was worth your time. Please send an email into them, and if you did not get a chance to testify, all of these bills got moved over to the next committees to be heard. So they are as they are right now. Not a single one of them are any good. There may be more changes that they may do to these bills down the future that may change a lot of the stuff that I have problems with, but I don't see that happening. It is not the will of our legislators down there to work for the majority. It is the will of our legislators to try to bamboozle us out of as much of our permanent, rightfully owned permanent fund dividends that we legally are supposed to be receiving, but they continue to keep stealing. And so one day I hope that things change, but I don't see that happening. 6 years tells me that they have no interest in doing the will of the people, but the will of the minority special interest. Like, share, go to my website, politadick.com, click that donate button, click that support button, take your choice. They both take you to almost the same page. Make a contribution today. Every penny goes right back into making sure that when the important things are happening, I can afford to be here to live stream these things. And if it wasn't for me having a good day of being able to wrap up my jobs early, I wouldn't have been able to live stream here today also. Thanks to our governor lifting the restrictions and no longer being under a declared emergency, I went from not having a lot of time on my hands because I had no work, to where now I'm actually seeing more work coming in than I have time. And I'm not complaining. God knows I'm not complaining. I've been needing it for way too long. So go to my website, politadick.com, click that support button. All contributions, make sure that I can be here to be able to do this. I would like to be able to do this full time. That would take every single one of you guys making a contribution of no more than $5 a month. If I could get all 3,500 of you guys out there to contribute just $5 a month, I would no longer have to turn wrenches and do the job that I do to earn a living. I could be here doing this all day long, live streaming the most important stuff that is going on down in Juneau so that we're all on the same page, receiving the most information in regards to what these bills are, taking away the time that you need to be able to learn and understand them. I can take the time to be able to myself to absorb what they're saying and what they're trying to do, and then relay it back to you in a common language, something that is not full of this bill number, that bill number. Here's the nuts and bolts of what they're trying to do. Thank you all again for sharing, and thank you for being here today. You all have a great afternoon, and enjoy the warm weather that's rolling back into Alaska. Have a good one.